It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Howdy-ho, hey-ah. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We've got 2 interviews up today. First one up is Paul Sidhu. Paul is an actor who has a movie out called 2307 Winter's Dream. It's a sci-fi thriller. Very good movie. Very good effects. Nice story. Frozen world in the not-too-distant future. He will be up first, followed by Kimberly Faye Greenberg, who is a Broadway actress. She said I could call her actress, so I will. She has her own solo show called Fabulous Fanny, the songs and stories of Fanny Brice. If you don't know who Fanny Brice is, look her up, because she was one of the founding female comedians back in the day. And many female comedians who followed after her often credited her for starting the whole thing off. She will be up second. No time for chit-chat. We will be right back with Paul Sidhu.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Paul Sidhu. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. How are you? Thank you.
Doing very well. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I watched your film.
My pleasure.
2307 Winter's Dream. Really great film. Really nice. I enjoyed that. I want to talk about the film.
Thank you.
But before we talk about the film, let's just do a little bit of background on you. Why don't you just tell us about yourself and how you got to the point of making films, and then we'll talk about the film.
Sure, no problem. I guess I'll just go into specifically Winter's Dream, because it was such a long journey. Getting this film onto the big screen. It really started about, I'd say, now it's been about 3 years ago, where I had written a short story in a treatment entitled Winter's Dream, and came up with this concept for this science fiction action film. Through the process of writing the treatment, I got introduced to some folks that put me in touch with different screenwriters, and so I got together with the screenwriter of this film, who is Joey Curtis, who's known for being one of the screenwriters on Blue Valentine. And that is how the journey began, with me and Joey collaborating on bringing this idea to life. You wrote this then? I wrote the story concept and the treatment, but the actual screenplay was written by Joey Curtis. We obviously had a lot of interplay, but he did all the heavy lifting on the screenplay.
Just for people who don't know, tell us what a treatment is.
Okay. So fundamentally, a treatment is somewhat of a synopsis of the film. And it really goes over the story concept, some of the main characters of the film, and it gives you sort of an idea of what, kind of journey the characters are taking, and really is I guess the easiest way to put it is really an outline for the writers when they're going into actually delivering the screenplay and the story arc. Okay, so if somebody was going to write a treatment, would it be scene by scene? Would you say, okay, in this scene they need to get from point A to point B and do this, and then the writers would fill in the actual dialogue? Something like that? Yeah, well, some treatments are very detailed, and others will be just like the general concept of, like, we have this character, he's 300 years in the future in a post-apocalyptic frozen over planet, and he has certain mission objectives, maybe some names of the main characters and the general arc of the story. But as far as scene by scene description is concerned, no, that would kind of happen in the actual screenplay writing process. And that's where the screenwriters get heavily involved in crafting the scenes and maybe restructuring the order of the story as well to make it more compelling for the audience. And then as well, doing all the nuances as far as the dialogue and so forth. But some of the main characters and basic names and concepts would be in the original treatment. So a writer would kind of know what he's getting into. He'd be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. This is like a definitive science fiction film. This is the arc of the main character. This is something I could really get on board with and bring to life.
Now, did you always want to be an actor or a writer, or what was your goal when you were younger?
I've always wanted to be an actor fundamentally. I've always dreamed of cinema and theater as a child, but I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington specifically, and I didn't go into drama school or acting school or any sort of schools related to theater. I chose a more pragmatic route. I did my undergraduate training over there at the University of Washington. And then I made my way down to California eventually. And once I was here in Southern California, that's when I made the decision to really pursue this career in acting. So I guess you could label me as a late starter. I mean, it's something I wanted to do in my teens, but it's something that I guess the best way to put it is maybe in my teens I didn't have the courage to pursue it, and as time went on, I finally made the decision and felt that it's something that I can do.
Yeah, one thing in this business, I mean, in the entertainment business, whether you're a musician or an actor or a radio show host, whatever, the central theme of the successful people in this business tends to be confidence. That's the main, and that's the hardest thing for a lot of people, is just to have that confidence in yourself that every time you get the no's that you keep going.
Yeah.
It's so
Definitely.
discouraging, because for most writers and actors and things, they'll get one yes and 1,000 no's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just to keep going no matter what, that level of confidence that you have to build up is challenging, to say the least, for most people. And I think it's, sort of the downfall of a lot of people. They just give up. They said, I've been doing this for 3 years and I've got nothing and nothing. And so they quit. Meanwhile, if they had kept going for 5 years, they probably would have got something.
No, I agree 100%. You gotta, in this industry, you gotta keep pushing forward. And I think the more time and energy, I'm a big believer of like doing the work. Like if you're really putting the work into it and you put the energy and effort into it, then eventually the opportunity is gonna happen. And if you're prepared and you've been working hard, then I think you can definitely go to the next level for sure. But yeah, you're right, 100%. It starts with having a confidence in yourself and believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with people that not necessarily are just like there to kind of pump you up, but just positive influences around your life, because you are going to be dealing with a lot of negativity, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of people that are going to constantly say, this project can't be done for XYZ reasons. But I think if you have the faith and you keep moving forward, things can happen. Yeah, definitely.
One of the things with this business, and I suppose it's true for any business, but I think it's more prevalent in the entertainment industry. It isn't so much about who you know, but who knows you. And the more you work, the more you get your name out there, the more people are going to know who you are. And I think that's more of a key You know, you can say, well, I know this guy. Okay, but does he know you? If he doesn't know you, then it doesn't make any difference if you know him. So I think that,
I agree.
Yeah, I think that just by default, the harder you work, the more people are going to recognize your name and recognize what you do. And therefore, oh, I remember that guy. He did that film, blah, blah, blah. You know, then the opportunities might come. It seems like it's this sort of really crazy dysfunctional family of all the entertainment people. You know what I mean? And it's just a matter of everybody getting to know who you are and what you do and what your strong points are. Okay, let's talk about the film a little bit. The film was obviously a sci-fi. It was quite good. One thing I was curious about was that it seemed like it was pretty high-tech and high-budget. How did you...
Yes.
Is this an indie, or did you get a studio backing for this?
Well, actually, it is an independent film, but it was planned in such a way that you know, we definitely have that studio feel going and that studio look. And part of the reason was that some of the key financiers and the collaborators on the film are actually like VFX houses. So they put a lot of their energy into the special effects of the film. So in a nutshell, if I may, the director on the film, who's Joey Curtis, and the producer, Robert Beaumont, and myself being the lead actor on the film, we had to make a pretty sort of bold decision, because we realized that when we started the film, we wouldn't have enough funding to finish it. And we sort of sat in a circle and looked at each other and said, hey guys, if we start now, we're hosed. You know, we don't have finishing funds. And so we came up with an alternative plan. We decided, like, let's use the funding we have to shoot all of the interiors of the film, which we know we can shoot in Los Angeles, and use that to raise funds for our massive exterior shot, which is going to be like a forward shoot in some remote location that has a lot of snow. So we took that approach and we actually shot all our interior shots for here in Los Angeles and used that footage to get more financiers involved in the film. And that's when one of our key financiers came on board, which is Platinum Platypus, which is a VFX house. And man, these guys just went to town. They saw some of the original footage and they were like, wow, there's so much we can do with this film. And so they came on board, and so did a group of other folks that believed in the film, and they gave us the finishing funds to actually complete the film. So it's a very, very independent film in heart, because even going into it, we weren't sure whether we could complete the film or not. But I mean, I think the core group of us, which is, you know, Robert Beaumont and Joey Curtis and myself, we had that faith. We were like, man, we're gonna make this thing happen. And we just put ourselves in constant, like, do or die situations, and fortunately, luck was on our side.
So you used all the interior shots as to make sort of a teaser and sent it around to people looking for funding to finish the film?
Exactly. We used all the interior shots, put together a teaser / trailer, and also just showed scenes. So we actually, showed scenes like this is our probe scene, and this is where the Spartans go into a probe, and this is so they got an idea of the caliber of directing that was going on. They got an idea of who the actors were, because all the actors involved in the film are really not well-known actors at all. So once they saw what the group in the unit was capable of, they felt comfortable, and they were like, yeah, we can definitely get behind this project, and we feel this project, has a future.
So how did you cast the film? Did you just do open auditions?
Yeah, it was open audition. We auditioned for about 3 months for most of the characters, and it was was just a long and arduous process because, as you know, that there's a lot of really good, talented people in Los Angeles, and for every role, we had we had literally hundreds of applicants, but a lot of them were just great. I mean, they were just really good people that just haven't had the opportunity to, display themselves. But the guys we finally decided on really fit the mold because there was a certain camaraderie that initially happened. So, you've heard of like big studio films that what they do is like they'll kind of do like this casting call, but obviously the big studio films use all well-known people, and then if it's like a romance film, they'll make sure that the two leads have like sort of chemistry, so they'll do like a second call. So what we did was we kind of narrowed down everybody we had, and then we just kind of put together our best picks to see what kind of chemistry there was. And the chemistry between Kelsey Watson, who plays El Hata, and Timothy DePriest, who plays Ishmael, and Fernando Argosino, who's in the movie as well, and myself, we could just kind of feel that there was like a natural bond there. So that's kind of how we finally made the decision with that core group of folks. And even Ariel, who plays of Kix, she's awesome. I mean, she fit in so well as well, even though she's more like the antagonist in the film. But it was great, and all these other characters as well. They just really brought something unique to the roles. So it was cool. It was a long casting process for an independent, because our pre-production was like, I think we were in pre-production for like a year, which is, I think, really long for like independent films, and I think it paid off.
The one question I did want to ask you was about the locations. Now, you said, okay, you shot all of the interior shots first. Now, how much is CGI and how much is, real prop stuff? It's hard to tell these days. It's really hard to tell what's what. In our film, I'd say a lot of it was not green screened. I mean, I think the majority of our film is actual footage. So the CGI component of the film is maybe like 20%, I would say, at the most. I don't think any more than that. Okay, and then the locations that because a lot of it was outside. I watched this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah.
But lots of it was outside, and the kind of the middle, the core of the movie was in this group of trees. There was like they were camping in this little spot where there were trees, and then the rest of it looked like tundra, right?
Right. So basically the exterior location, that's kind of not funny, but it's an interesting story. So after we had shot the interiors, we started like location scouting for the exteriors, and we were looking at northwest Canada, so right above like British Columbia or North British Columbia. We looked at Alaska as well. I know Joe was really interested in Iceland, so we looked at all these spots where we felt the topography matched the vision of the world of Winter's Dream, which is this frozen over planet 300 years in the future. And we were kind of doing the math on that, and we figured like, okay, this is, X amount of dollars are going to be required to shoot in these locations. But then something fortuitous happened. In 2015, there was like this polar vortex, and Lake Erie froze over, and it created these really kind of alien-like snowdrifts out on the frozen over lake. And the producer, Robert Beaumont, is from Western New York, and his buddies over there they were like, Robert, check out Lake Erie. They sent him pictures. And then so Robert got super excited because he was like, dude, we can like shoot on frozen over Lake Erie, and it's going to look like, Antarctica, and we can do it at like a third of the cost of if we went, abroad. So that's when the production made the quick decision to location scout Western New York. and we shot the majority of the film out on frozen Lake Erie. We had like a couple of snowmobiles, and they would take the cast and crew out to the center of the lake and to these areas, which looked pretty rad. And it was crazy. It was tough because it was so damn cold out there, and there was like this wind chill going, and we're an independent, so we don't have like proper heaters and warming tents, but it was a lot of fun. But but to answer your question, it was majority of it was shot out in the center of Lake Erie.
Of Lake Erie. Well, that's funny. Cool. That's actually, I would have never guessed that in a million years. I would have never guessed that was shot in the middle of Lake Erie. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
The lake was obviously frozen enough that you could get out there without worrying about falling in, right?
It's interesting you bring that up. Yeah, nobody mentioned about falling in, but I didn't even think about that, come to think of it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, nobody fell in, so I think I'm assuming somebody went out and made sure it was completely safe for us. But yeah, it was completely frozen over where we never had any days where people warned us like, hey, stay away from that area or this area. So it was pretty solid.
Well, you said the weather was always cold enough, right? So there was no chance that it was thawing.
Yeah, it was like below freezing out there when we were out there.
What are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on two films. One film we're in pre-production for, and we're going to be shooting it south of the border in Mexico, and that starts in the end of May. The producers of the film have asked me not to talk about the title because they're going to do their own, I guess, press release on that.
Okay.
So I'll be working on that, but that's an action genre film. It's a two-hander. I play this guy who's been hired as not like a hitman or anything, but he's a guy that gets hired by these dons south of the border to extract people, and it's a fun role. It's a lot of like gunplay and car chases, so it's really very different than Winter's Dream because the character is a bit lighter. And then in the summertime, we're finishing up production and shooting on a film I'm working on called Black, which has to do with the nexus of illegal opium trade and politics and narco-terrorism in the Afghan, Pakistan, northern India region.
Oh, wow, that sounds interesting.
Working on right now.
Yeah. Do you ever have any desire to do a comedic role, or are you seriously an action star?
I would love to do some comedy because action and drama is intense and I love it. But as an actor, you're constantly looking to grow, and you constantly want to challenge yourself to go into places where you may not be 100% comfortable. So I know comedy, I have some friends who are more comedic actors, and it's really amazing to watch them because they're naturally funny guys, but they really have that comedic timing down. It's that timing that they have as they respond to certain statements or the maneuvers they make that really makes them funny. And I think that's something that's very difficult to do. And I dig it. I'd go for it.
Well, I think the comedic timing is something kind of that comes natural to people or not. People that have it is very obvious. All the way back to Charlie Chaplin. But yeah, you're right. There's a certain knack about it. Jason Statham, actor.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Has he done any comedy? Because that's one guy I could never see doing comedy. He's just so badass in every movie.
Jason Statham is, first of all, he's like, I think he's like the action hero. I mean, his action scenes are just amazing.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, but if you watch him, even in his action films, there is some comedy. Like, I think it comes out in the way he's looking at people and sort of like his his reluctant skepticism when he's responding to other people's statements. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how you find him, but I enjoy watching him because sometimes I'm laughing. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't know, but in regards to like full on comedy, like Jackie Chan or something, I don't really see him in that situation. Yeah,
I do get what you're saying. He's got a certain sarcasm in the way that the way that he does certain things, which is funny. Yeah, subtle humor.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
It's subtle humor, and I think that's part of it. I think that's why he's so charming in a way to watch. He's got that natural sort of sarcastic charm about him, which I think a lot of these great leading men have to some degree, which is kind of cool to watch.
I think the one that comes to mind is the Italian Job. There were some actual funny moments in that with him. So yeah, okay. Well, maybe that's the you could go that direction, yeah. Or do you want to do like straight out silly comedy?
Yeah, definitely.
Are you up for that?
No. I think maybe I don't know. I'm going to see how this next film goes. Because I think there's some opportunity for comedy in this next action film, which is we're going to be shooting in Mexico. So I'm going to kind of gauge myself as I go through that one. See how it goes.
Well, we got to kind of wrap this up. Do you have a website that you want to promote that people can take a look at your projects?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if I could promote my Twitter handle and my Instagram feed, that'd be great.
Sure.
I don't
go ahead.
have like a proper website up right now. So at Twitter, I am, Real Paul Sidhu. So that's just like Real Paul Sidhu. Sidhu, and then on Instagram, I'm the Real Paul Sidhu. We couldn't get Real Paul Sidhu.
Are there fake Paul Sidhus out there?
I think there's some fake Paul Sidhus out there. Let me warn you. So
wow.
I don't know if you have a bad interaction with a Paul Sidhu, he's got to be the fake one.
Well, then you know you've made it when there's fake ones. When there's clones of you out there, then you've gone to the big time now. I think there's about 15 fake Justin Biebers on Twitter.
Oh wow. He deserves some clones.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, they could have an army of them attack Canada. That would be something great.
That's true.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us. I enjoyed it. Best of luck with the new project, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Douglas. Appreciate your time, and it was a pleasure.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. All you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EPPSproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me this spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Kimberly Faye Greenberg. Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show. You are
Of course.
Broadway actor, is that correct?
I am. I'm a Broadway actress, and I work in New York City, and I do a bunch of other things as well, but pretty much performance-based.
Now, you said actress. I didn't want to say actress because I thought we went sort of gender non-specific these days, but I wasn't sure.
It doesn't really matter to me.
Okay. Well, you know, some people use it, some people don't. I don't think it's, I don't know. I don't find it offensive that if people say actress, but, you know.
Nah, it doesn't really matter either way. I think it just comes out of my mouth whenever I say it. It comes out actress.
Some people are sensitive, you know.
Yeah, I get it.
Anyways, okay, so just give us a little background on yourself. Tell us how you got involved in acting and what, you know, how you got the bug and all that, and then we'll talk about some of your projects.
Oh, sounds good. Well, I started performing really young. I think a lot of people who end up being professional performers usually start pretty young because once you catch the bug, it's very hard to stop. It's almost like a drug in and of itself. And so I guess, and I was lucky when I was younger, you know, we still had arts in the schools, and I played the violin. I did all the school plays through junior high and high school, and went to college for performing as well in California. And when I graduated, started auditioning, and luckily I had a good education and good teachers who really taught me the business, and was able to start booking work right away. And then I ended up moving to New York City, and I've lived in New York now for, 17 years. So I guess I'm a New Yorker now, working my way up through regional theater and off-Broadway and Broadway, and getting known as a girl who plays Fanny Bryce a lot, if anyone listening knows maybe who that is, or we might talk about that later. And sort of branching out into all kinds of different areas as well, because what the big thing is for performers is you got to have your hands in as many pots as possible in order to survive and continue to work and pay bills and still enjoy life, basically.
Well, that's very true. And, you know, the technology has changed so much of the landscape of entertainment for especially musicians and filmmakers. And a lot of them are doing other things, you're right, to pay the bills. You know, it's always funny with musicians that I interview. And I say, well, nobody's buying CDs anymore. So how are you making a living? And they say, well, I sell lots of T-shirts and coffee mugs.
Right. It's,
you know.
Right. Exactly. And I think, too, the landscape of performing and people in the arts, I know I've talked to a lot of other people about this as well, and I sort of preach it when I talk to other people, is you have to really create your own work. Because, again, in the landscape of the internet and YouTube and social media and all those things, it's really easy to get yourself out there so people can see you, and you sort of never know what's going to happen when you do that. It creates a lot more opportunity, and when you sort of find your niche, or, you know, what people kind of want to buy from you as a performer. So yeah, it's definitely the landscape of creating your own work and finding all kinds of other endeavors where you can share your talent. That's not necessarily just in that little thing that you started out doing originally.
Well, one thing about theater is that hasn't really changed too much. I mean, it's still people live performing on stage. Typically, if it's a big production, you've got an orchestra. So, I mean, everything is real as opposed to, you know, music that's sort of computer created. So, in a sense, the art form is still very much traditional of what it used to be, and it always has been, right?
Yeah, I mean, the art form itself is still based in what it's always been, but it's definitely changed, and it's gotten a lot more smaller. Because where money is concerned, you have people creating shows that don't require as many people. They require a small band. They don't necessarily require a full orchestra. I know a lot on Broadway now, you could only have maybe even a few musicians in the pit. And even this season, a show opened up on Broadway that has no musicians. It was all a cappella. So it really just sort of depends. It depends on what people create at this point. But, you know, a lot of times what people create, when the producers want to produce, they also want to save a buck. So then things can shift with numbers and, how many people are used and the kind of music they're doing because it's easier to produce with a lesser sound. So it just depends. I mean, the basic premise is still there, but definitely the art form in itself has shifted as far as the kinds of things that are being put on stage.
Now, on a full-blown Broadway show in New York, I haven't been to one in years, but what's the average size of the venue? Like one of the, the major theaters.
Well, the thing about Broadway versus an off-Broadway or something even smaller, in New York City they call off-Broadway. So Broadway is considered any theater in New York City between a certain thoroughfare. I think it's like 40th Street and 59th that has 500 or more seats.
Okay.
So basically, it can be a really large space of a couple thousand seats. There can be something on the smaller side. There are several Broadway theaters that are pretty small, like 500 seaters. And then the other two are defined off-Broadway is 99 seats to 499 seats. And off-Broadway is all the really, really tiny theaters in the city that's like under 99 seats. So it's really a numbers thing. It's really, however big it gets is a seating thing, like an audience thing, and that's how you determine how big a Broadway show, if something's in a Broadway show or not, a Broadway house.
Oh, okay. Actually, I didn't know that. For some reason, I thought it had to do with the amount of production. Like a low-budget film versus a full-blown Universal Studio $200 million.
I think most people are under that impression, but it's actually not really that at all. It's really just the number of seats in the theater that account for whether or not it is specifically defined as a Broadway show. A lot of times, Broadway, again, are very small productions at this point. You can see a lot of Broadway shows now that don't have a lot of sets and don't have a lot of cast members. It's not a big spectacle. It's more about creating more of like an idea of a film, like very intimate feeling, even if it isn't a big space. And you could go see off-Broadway shows that are in smaller theaters, 100 seats to up to 499 seats. That could really still be big spectacles. It could even be immersive. There's an immersive show on Broadway now where it's like basically the audience is surrounded by the show itself. They built the sets and the actors come in the audience. But a lot of off-Broadway is that as well. So a lot of that sort of pertains to smaller venues because with audiences wanting to be involved, then usually in a smaller venue versus a big one. But yeah, it's not really about the production value. It's more so about the number of seats in New York City.
Well, would Cirque du Soleil count as a Broadway show?
Well, there is a Cirque show in a Broadway house right now, so that would at this moment be considered a Broadway show. I think that Cirque show is called Paramore. But if you're seeing like a Cirque show in another town and it's never been on Broadway before, then you wouldn't necessarily call it a Broadway show. Okay. Anything that goes out on tour that's been on Broadway and it's a very similar version of it, you could potentially call it the Broadway show on tour, potentially. There are a few other factors that go into that, but so a Cirque show wouldn't necessarily be a Broadway show unless it's that one that was on Broadway going on the road. Oh,
I see. So it physically has to be in New York City on Broadway to be called a Broadway show.
Technically. I mean, well, you're basically technically getting the show that they had in New York. It's usually not exactly the same, but it's the same premise, similar sets, same idea, same sort of direction, things like that. And then then a lot of those shows use the reviews to advertise to sell the show in the next city or things like that. So that's sort of how that determines that.
Now, you're originally from California, right?
I am.
And now you live in New York. Which do you prefer?
I love New York because it's the one place that I can do what I do, which is mostly theater. It's very hard to do that in California, but I love California because of the weather. I do miss having sunshine most of the time, specifically Southern California weather. I've lived in Northern California as well. They don't always have sunshine, but I do miss the beautiful weather and being able to go outside in t-shirts every day New York, you have all the seasons, and of course it gets cold and snows and blizzards. But take the good and the bad, I guess.
I always have the same answer as you do. When people say, well, L.A. has great weather. Beyond that, I can't think of much about L.A. that I particularly liked.
Yeah, I mean, the traffic is horrible.
and there just didn't seem to be that. New York has real culture, it has real flavor, it has, I don't know. L.A. just seems to be like one giant suburb connected with a bunch of overcrowded freeways. And you know what I mean? There just doesn't feel like there's community like in New York. I
can understand that. I mean, New York, it's a very, people don't realize it, but the people who don't live here, New York City is an island, and it's not that large.
Right.
I'm not sure how many miles is it, but it's not large at all. So you've got all these people crammed in this very small space. So yes, you're always surrounded by people. You're always talking to people no matter where you go. And I find in New York City, too, people are very real. They'll say what they mean. There's no malice involved, but it's very grounded in its sense of reality. In LA, I think, you're in your car a lot. You don't talk to a lot of people. Again, like you said, it's a lot of suburbia surrounded by freeways. I would agree with that.
I definitely would take New York, I think, over LA. That's just my opinion. Okay, I wanted to ask you one question, and then I did want to talk about Fanny Bryce. If I was a playwright, how does one shop around a play? Because I know how authors do it for screen, but I've never really asked anybody how they do it for theater. Is it the same process?
Oh, really, in performing arts world, even in writing for novels and things like that, there are no particular rules, because there's always a way to make something happen, whether you have a friend who can, per se, publish your play, and then that puts it out into the world, and people start reading it, and then people start wanting to produce it, and that's how, you get to be known. You could find somebody to publish it for you, could self-publish it for you, could produce it yourself, which is a lot of what happens in New York City. People self-produce their plays, and then people see them, and then if they're any good, they usually get picked up or published, or a big producer will see it, and then they'll want to put it on. And then, there's all kinds of festivals, just like they do with films, and, the Tribeca Film Festival, where people submit their films. The same thing happens in the play realm, where people submit their plays to these festivals, and then the festivals produce them, and then those who win the festival get their work produced, and then again, it's just, more things just keep happening as long as you just keep putting out there. So that's what I try to tell people. It's the same in any sort of creative market, where there are ways to do things, but there are really no set rules. Kind of make your own rules and make it up as you go along, and keep trying things until something happens, basically.
Is there any difference in the format to writing a theater play versus a film, a screenplay?
I think it's becoming less and less formulaic at this point, because I tend to find that a lot of playwrights have more of that film mentality, very quick scenes, minimalistic, very realistic acting, sort of a similar formula. I think just with stage, you do have to make the stakes a little bit higher, and a little bit more presentational, because you have an audience sitting in front of you. But I mean, and that, a play takes place, it can take place over a period of years or whatever, but again, it's all in one sitting with the audience watching you. So I mean, it's not really that much difference. I know plenty of playwrights and writers who write screenplays and write plays, and they're very successful. So people tend to work across all platforms, again, because as a performer, as a writer, as anything, you got to kind of spread the wealth out and see where you're going to be making money and getting your name out there to get more things happening with your career.
Is there money to be made in theater? Because I've talked to theater people who said, well, the money isn't great, but I love being live on the stage, so occasionally I'll take a film role to make the money and then go back to the theater.
I would have to agree with that statement. Unless you're in a Broadway show making production contract salary, and even then, It's very hard to survive. Many people who work on Broadway shows, like myself, have many other jobs that they do. Because you never know, your show could open and then close. You really just don't know. And I work backstage as well as on stage. But, like, no, there's not a lot of money to be made. Where the money comes is, yes, doing TV and film. I know, like, my reps who rep me, most actors have agents who help them get jobs, or managers who help them get jobs. They of course, want me to get the TV and film work because that's where there's more money to be made there. And you could do one role and make a ton of money, and then you could survive off of that for a while.
Sure.
Versus theater, it's just not quite that way in theater. But again, yes, most people do it for the love of it, to be in front of a live audience. It's a whole different thing than being on a TV and film set, where you don't have any immediate gratification. It's a thing that we all do because we're very passionate about it as well. We'd rather not have the money and be on stage versus the other way around.
What is a typical Broadway performer's salary? Give me a ballpark. I mean, not a big name star, but like just somebody, you know what I mean?
Well, to be in the ensemble, the standard contract, I think now is like $1,900 a week, I think, is production contract salary. That's doing 8 shows a week, and then within the 8 shows, you're also required to be at numerous rehearsals during the day. And then you also have to think that sort of whittles down really fast, because as performers, we all have representation that we have to pay cuts to, so they all get percentages of that, and then taxes get taken out, and then you have to pay your bills. So it doesn't end up being a whole heck of a lot of money. It seems a lot right when you look at it, but once the money starts coming out, it's not as much as you think it would be.
Well, and that's not a ton of money for New York City either. You know,
no, the cost of living here is a lot higher than most places. Yeah,
I know that. Definitely. Just, you know, people that are paying $4,000 and $5,000 a month just for a 2-bedroom apartment, there goes half your check right there. You know, just for the rent. Exact.
Yeah, and that's very true, too. That's why most people have roommates who live in the city. I mean, I live in New Jersey. I literally live right across the river from Times Square, Manhattan. But I live in a place that's a little bit more affordable, so I'm not paying those kinds of prices. But, yes, if you live in Manhattan proper, it's very, very expensive to live and buy food and everything like that. Everything's a lot more money.
Yeah, just that little trip across the bridge, they give you an extra tax. You get an extra city tax thrown on everything.
I think it's $16 to like just cross a tunnel or bridge. Yeah. It's very expensive.
Okay, yeah. So who is Fanny Brice? Tell us who she was.
Okay. Well, Fanny Brice, if any listeners are familiar with Funny Girl, the movie Funny Girl, or the musical Funny Girl, or the movie Funny Lady, which Barbra Streisand
right.
played in all of those. So that's based on Fanny Brice and her life. And she basically was famous from the 1920s through the early 50s when she passed away. She was a big star in the Ziegfeld Follies. She started in vaudeville. Then she became this big Broadway star in the Follies, and then she started doing movies. And some of her movies, I think you can watch them on Netflix now online. Rose of Washington Square is one of them. Everybody Sing, I believe. Be Yourself is one of them. And then she went on to play Baby Schnucks on the radio for 25 years. Wow. So a lot of people still are very, very familiar with her radio program. You can find it all over the internet just by Googling it. And then she was also famous because she was literally the very first female torch singer, the very first female comedian, and the very first comedian who used her ethnicity to get famous, because it was all very Yiddishy, Jewish sticky humor. So all these things sort of came together to influence a lot of the things that we have today. Her songs that she sang are now very much a part of the Americana repertoire of standards that many singers sing today. And then comedians like Carol Burnett are sort of all stemmed from what she did. It all kind of was, she was the catalyst for many, many things to come that we still see today.
Was she, I'm really not familiar with her, but was she anything like Mae West in terms of it being very controversial or a little bit dirty in her in her routine?
She was, I think, well, she wasn't dirty in a way. But it was the religious. It was was like putting on that sort of Jewishy shticky thing that had never been seen before. So that was sort of a very controversial thing at the time. And of course, being a woman and being very much at the height of the performing arts scene at her time was a big deal, because she was also one of the first. Yeah, so it wasn't sexy in a way. She technically, they say, the fact that she wasn't pretty, although she was an attractive woman, helps her to rise as well, because she just used all her flaws to become famous. And the other thing I didn't mention, which is interesting, which is sort of another reason why she stayed in the news, is she was married 3 times. Her second husband was Nick Arnstein, and he was a big gambler during the time, and he actually pulled off the biggest heist in Wall Street history. He stole millions of dollars from Wall Street. Wow. So she was in the news a lot at that point, and then she ended up being married. Her third husband was Billy Rose, who was a big Broadway producer at the time. He was the lyricist composer. His music is all over as far as in Broadway today, so she was also married to him as well. So she definitely has a very strong base in musical theater world, and in the history of where everything kind of stems from.
Well, the ones that come to mind when you said that, without really knowing who Fanny Brice was, is Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers.
Yes, exactly. It's very, very similar. If you look at any of the female comedians, Gracie Allen comes to mind. Yeah, and any of the ones you just mentioned, they all came from her starting that. She's the one who started that trend.
And maybe even Bette Midler later on, when she was doing her stand-up in the gay bathhouses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all very similar. And if you even look at Barbra Streisand, she's not a comedian, but a lot of her shtick that she does is Fanny's shtick. It's a lot of the same thing. A lot of her songs are Fanny Brice songs originally. So they've all looked back on her. I'm sure that a lot of them grew up either listening to Fanny, or their parents listened to Fanny, or you know what I mean? So there is some connection there.
So you're doing a one-woman show sort of as a tribute to her? You're playing her, right?
I play her, yeah. I'm known in the theater world, in New York City especially, for playing her, because I do have my own solo show that tours the U.S. I play her in the show, and everyone sort of learns about her life, lots of little stories. I sing a lot of her hit tunes. I also sing some stuff from Funny Girl, which of course people know. And then I'm also known because I played her in another Broadway show. I played her in a show that's hopefully coming to Broadway. It's kind of in that workshop stage where shows have to go through a process to get to Broadway, and it's in that process. And then I played her in another solo show as well that was off Broadway, which is how this whole connection with her began. And I have 2 albums out in the world as well. So if you listen to Spotify or Pandora, or if you go to any of the major music sites, iTunes, Amazon, and you type in my name or you type in Fanny Brice, I will pop up.
So tell me a little bit about the show. Do you do comedy and singing? Is it monologue, or how does it work?
Yeah. Well, it's a full, it's not a cabaret in any sense of the typical cabaret world, even though it is a one-woman show. But I consider it more of a book show. I sing a lot of her songs. I play her telling the audience a lot about her life and what she went through. I play a few other characters in the piece as well as sort of it goes. I do tap dancing. She's a tap dancer. And I basically just sort of take you on this journey of getting to know this woman from when she became famous to just different aspects of her life as it goes. And then it ends, of course, with a tribute to her with songs from Funny Girl.
Okay, I'm thinking of, all of a sudden, for some reason, Hal Holbrook came to mind when he did that Mark Twain thing years
exactly.
ago. Is it like that?
It's a similar idea. A similar idea, except I have music because she's a singer, so I sing.
Okay. Oh, that sounds great.
And sing a lot of her material. Yeah.
Okay, and the website for that is fabulousfannybriceshow.com, yeah?
Yes, exactly.
Do you think technology has radically shortened people's attention span?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I even see that as an actor in the theater. I mean, people can't sit still. It's, you know, and I know too. I sometimes am this way too, where you always like want to check your phone and see what's next or move on to the next thing. I definitely think that's totally true. We just don't have those kinds of attention spans anymore.
It's too bad, because I remember when I was in high school, if I bought an album, and this is going back where they were on vinyl, you know, I would go home and I would get into my room and put the headphones on and lie on the floor and just listen to that whole album and just be like, wow. Mm-hmm. You know, the album would take me there for the hour or whatever it played, right? And now I can still do it because I'm older, but I see the kids, they can't do that. They'll listen to 30 seconds of a song and then switch to something else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would agree with you on that too. Again, it's just things move quickly. Things move really fast.
Well, listen, we got to wrap this up. What are you working on now? What is your current agenda?
Well, I hopefully will be bringing my Fanny Bryce show again to the Midwest. It's looking like I've got some bookings coming up potentially in Colorado, Kansas, I think one in Connecticut, maybe in Illinois. So people should keep an eye on my fabulousfannybryceshow.com website, or if they're interested in bringing my show to them, to contact me. And all the email stuff is there. Coming up this month in New York City, I've definitely got a couple of shows. I'm in a musical based on the children's book, The Little Red Lighthouse, which is, some people may or may not be familiar with that, but it's an award-winning children's book that's been around since, I think, 1908. And we're doing that at the New York Historical Society, so anyone that lives here could find out more about that. I'm in another concert of another musical at 54 Below this month at Nick and Nora, which is a show from the 60s, I believe, that's having a concert reunion with the original cast, and I'm lucky because I'm not the original cast, but I get to be part of it anyway. And then I've got some other TV and film things coming up as well, which will be announced on my website shortly. And then, of course, again, people can watch me online. I have some great advice videos online for actors, all about different business aspects of the business. So if you can either watch my channel on YouTube or go to my website to find out more information. And my website is KimberlyFayeGreenberg.com, and you can Google me and it'll all pop up. And then also make sure to watch for me too on TheaterNerds.com, because there's also new fun videos coming out there as well as some articles available to read. And again, just keep an eye on me on my website, and all my things get announced there. I try to keep that up as much as I possibly can with everything else that's going on.
Well, it sounds like you're incredibly busy, but I suspect you love every minute of it.
I do. I tell people that I'm a little bit of a workaholic multitasker, but it does. It brings me joy, and I'm very passionate about what I do. So I'm happy that I can do that for a living. I can't see myself doing anything else. So
yeah, that's fabulous. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great talking to you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Also learned a couple of things about the Broadway seating assignments. So that was very...
Yeah, right.
That was informative. Okay, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you again.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Paul Sidhu and Kimberly Faye Greenberg. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
You've got to breathe.